to introduce today's speakers. We have with us here today Kelly Piacenti, who is the head of MassMutual SpecialCare, and Jerry Hulick, who is a special needs consultant with the Washington Group SpecialCare planning team. Welcome, Kelly and Jerry.
Lauren, thank you so much.
You.
It's always a pleasure to be able to have an opportunity to speak to your folks. So thank you for having us today.
Thank you.
So I think we're just going to get right into it, Lori, if that's fine. We're going to talk about ABLE Acts today. But before we do that, we just need to go over some important disclosures with you. So the information provided is not written or intended as specific tax or legal advice. MassMutual's, its employees, subsidiaries, and representatives are not authorized to give tax or legal advice. Individuals are encouraged to seek advice from their own tax or legal counsel. So today we're going to talk about the ABLE Acts. Some people refer to it as the Achieving Better Life Experience Act, which occurred on December 19th under President Obama as part of the Tax Extended Program. The law will allow and does allow individuals with disabilities to have a tax-free account. It's modeled very similar to a 529 college plan account. Funds in an ABLE account will not affect your eligibility for federally funded means tested benefits, such as SSI, which is Social Security income, or Medicaid. Legislation is required in each state for the most up-to-date information on which states have launched the ABLE Act. You can visit www.ablenrc.org to get that information. Today, we're going to talk about the difference between ABLE and a special needs trust. Many people are confused as to, Kelly, do I need both? Do I need one? What do I do? So hopefully today, we're going to give you some information on ABLE and also on special needs trust so that you can make that decision on your own.
And Kelly, I think that this is really pretty important legislation when it passed, because it really gave the ability for the first time to accumulate money on a tax-favored basis. So the ability to save for those with disabilities was just a critical component that had been a problem in the past, because it was always going to affect any means tested benefits that were being received. So not only can we accumulate money and save inside of an ABLE account, the ABLE allows for certain tax benefits within states, and also it allows really for what we would consider to be kind of financial inclusion as to possibilities for accumulating money and that kind of thing. So if we move to some of the issues around eligibility, and now my system isn't working. You must be blind or be disabled prior to the age 26. And I think this next bullet is sometimes one of the confusing things, that you can be older than age 26 as long as the disability occurred prior to 26. So many times we'll have individuals that don't think they're eligible because they're over the age of 26. Well, the disability must have been manifested or diagnosed prior to the age of 26. The age of criteria, once it's met, if you're on SSI or SSDI, then basically you're going to be automatically eligible at that point in time. And if not, almost all the states have a certification process that you can go through where you're showing your disability. I know, Kelly, in the state of Virginia, they simply ask, are you eligible based on a disability? And if you are, they ask you to hold any sort of documentation and don't send it in. They basically are taking people's word on the issue of eligibility. So even the certification process has gotten a lot easier over the last several years. So when we look at the limits, why am I not working?
So, Darren, just to add, people, come to me and they ask a lot of questions about the age 26. One of the reasons that was created is, keep in mind, it was really modeled after 529s. But in addition to that, it was really to prevent when people get elderly wanting to put all their money into a special needs trust and then have them live in a nursing home. That really wasn't what this was for. This was for people with special needs, typically somebody that had been born with some type of need, but you could be up to the age of 26, which means if a car accident occurred or something occurred prior to the age of 26, you would be eligible. But I think Jerry makes a great point. People get confused and think, well, I'm 28, so I can't apply for an ABLE account. That's incorrect. What they're actually looking at is, do you qualify for those government benefits? And when exactly did the disability occur, or were you diagnosed? Having the proper physician information, a letter, a statement with the information regarding the disability is always helpful, as well as being qualified for government benefits.
So when we look at the limits, the maximum annual contributions are limited by the annual IRS gift tax exclusion. So that is currently sitting at $15,000. So in 2021 and in 2022, the limit of contributions is going to be $15,000. Now that could come from 15 different sources. Ultimately, it's up to, you know, the $15,000 contribution could literally come from multiple sources, or it could come from a single source. And we'll talk later a little bit about some of the other things that exist that allow you to transfer monies in from different kinds of programs. An additional $12,760 can be contributed from the earnings of the beneficiary themselves. So even if if they're working and have some earned wages, then they'll be able to put in $12,760 additional, which brings the total annual contribution possibility upwards of $27,000 to $28,000. That's going to be going up to $12,880 in 2022. It tracks against the poverty level line that is established every year by the IRS and the federal government. States will have limits on the total amount that can be put in, and those range anywhere from as low as $235,000 to as high as $529,000. The state limits usually tied to the similar limits that the state may have for their college plans. This was originally modeled after college plans, 529. This is Section 529A. Importantly, though, the maximum amount, if you're on any sort of public assistance benefits like SSI, then you can't have any more than $100,000 in the account, or SSI will be suspended. Now, that's a key point, because if it drops down below 100 again, then SSI would reactivate. It does not, exceeding the 100,000, have any impact on Medicaid. So those that are not on any sort of SSI benefit, then this really becomes an add-on to the means test, so that you could, have, if you were in SSI, you could have up to 102,000, and there wouldn't be any impact of those public assistance benefits. So this is what really has made it watershed legislation on that possibility. Only one ABLE account is allowed per beneficiary, per person, and it's on the beneficiary of the individual, and contributions can be made by anyone, beneficiaries, family members, friends, all of that kind of thing. And, as we approach the end of the year, keep in mind that if you've not established an ABLE account, you could conceivably put in $15,000 today. And again, you'll have that opportunity again after the first of the year. So for end-of-year planning, and then in some cases too, where there might be some tax incentives or tax deductibility within your given states, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later, this is a great time from a year-end planning standpoint and accumulation standpoint to think in terms of what is going in, whether there be a tax deduction involved, and the fact that you're going to have the availability of additional contributions in the coming year right after the 1st of January. So Kelly, anything to add on limits?
Of course, I always have something to add, right? So a couple questions that are coming in, and some of the things we're hearing is about the 100,000. Now, keep in mind that the maximum amount is 100,000, but you would have to accumulate that year over year. You can't just put 100,000 in an ABLE account. The maximum is 15,000 per year. Keep in mind that the additional 12,760 can be contributed for earnings. So that's separate in addition to the 15,000. So just take a look at this slide. I think this gives a lot of great information, clears up some of the confusion around the amount that you can have in an ABLE account. Jerry and I are going to talk a little bit about, the difference between ABLE and special needs trust. And one of the things I always want people to keep in mind is I don't really see ABLE as a place to keep all of your savings. And we'll get into why that could affect you in the future. but you do have the option of putting money in both an ABLE as well as a special needs trust. We don't advocate either way, because at MassMutual, it's not something that we have. We don't have ABLE accounts. We can help you get one. The same thing with a special needs trust, but we will give you the different information regarding each and the pros and the cons.
Yeah, it's a key point, Kelly, because everybody, you know, will use these ABLE accounts. Some people will use them more as spend accounts because many of them come with debit cards. And so it's an easy way to utilize them. But, and we'll talk about this later as well, with a $15,000 annual limitation to the amount of money you can put in, it's not an appropriate vehicle for things like inheritances or large gifts that come across. But it is a great accumulation advice. And anytime we can get a tax favored accumulation, then that's going to really leverage how the returns are on a given program.
And keep in
So
mind
why
that,
don't you speak, Kelly?
sure. I mean, and keep in mind that ABLE accounts were really established to give a person with a disability independence, so that the 30-year-old wasn't going to his parents and saying, I need somebody to pay for me to go out to dinner, or I need you to help me, I want to pay my electric bill. It was really, you know, set up to give individuals that independence that they didn't have. Just because they had a disability, they didn't want to have to run to their parents for every bit of money that they wanted to spend. So that was one of the reasons that ABLE was set up. Now, keep in mind that when you want to spend money out of an ABLE account, it has to be a qualified disability expense, very similar to a special needs trust. Keep in mind that the government does oversee these accounts. Like a special needs trust, they want to know what the money is being spent on. Many states, and every state has a little bit of a different bell and whistle regarding their account, but they're all the same at the end of the day. Maybe one has a debit card, maybe one has a credit card, but they're watching some of the expenditures that you're really spending on. So education is a qualified expense. Housing, transportation, employee training and support, assisted technology, health, prevention and wellness, financial management, legal fees, expenses for ABLE account oversight, funeral and burial expenses, and basic living expenses. What I always want people to keep in mind with ABLE, one of the things that you can spend ABLE on that you cannot use a special needs trust for is food and shelter, because that would be duplicating what the government benefits are giving you that money for. So many of the people that we work with may have money in a special needs trust, and they can transfer that money from the special needs trust into the ABLE account and use that on food and shelter. It's not anything illegal. It's something that is a qualified expense that they're able to do, but it's actually knowing that you can do that, because a lot of families don't realize it. But this also pays for education. So many people now with disabilities, they go to, you know, college, they live at college. This can provide for educational expenses as well.
And that's a key point. One of the biggest distinctions with ABLE, that why it works so well in conjunction with a special needs trust, is that housing component. And so many times you could, and we've always heard that maybe an unencumbered house is put into a trust, there's no mortgage or anything like that, but you still have expenses of maintenance, you still have expenses of taxes and things. And so that's where an ABLE can really transact in conjunction with a special needs trust, giving a better overall lifestyle possibility for those that are involved. And I think that what we're finding too with the debit cards, it's an easy way to track the expenses, because it's going to give you a process of tracking what monies are being spent on and for, and with the amounts. We've not had too many situations I'm aware of where the IRS has come back in and audited it in any way to see it. But the fact that we have that debit card possibility gives us that great ability to then just have the backup for if that situation were to manifest itself. So again, an excellent opportunity to merge it in with other planning instruments. So now if we look at Payback, Kelly, why don't you lead with that?
Yeah, and I mean, and we're getting this question right now. I'm trying to kind of monitor some of the questions that are coming in. And one of the questions is, you know, what happens to the money when someone passes away? And this is one of the things I don't like about ABLE, is that ABLE accounts require a Medicaid payback provision, which may in most states when someone dies. So first party trust, which is a trust that's set up when somebody owns money, has a payback provision. A third party special needs trust, which are the ones that are most common, is set up maybe from someone's parents. You're setting it up on behalf of the person with a disability. There is no payback provision on a third party special needs trust. So you could put $1 million in this third party special needs trust, get every government benefit that's out there. And when the person passes, that money can go back to the family. With a first party special needs trust, the person owned the money or the money came from some sort of settlement. So when they pass away, there is a Medicaid payback. So whatever they used in Medicaid, the government has a right to come and say, hey, we spent $500. If that money's left, we want it. If there's only $5 in the account, they can take that $5 and there's nothing else for them to take. There's nowhere else for them to go. Now with ABLE, one of the things that I'm not crazy about is that there is a payback provision. There are a couple states right now that say, well, we're not going to do the payback provision. We're not going to worry about it in our particular state. But as it stands right now, most states have a payback provision. So if a person passes away that has an ABLE account and they have that $15,000 in it, and Medicaid has paid for things for them throughout their life that equal or go over the $15,000, they will take that money. That money is not going back to the family. So what I always tell our families is you can certainly use an ABLE to give the person the independence, put some money in it, but I wouldn't use it as a savings account or put any large sums of money in it, because if the person passes away and they've received a pretty good amount from Medicaid, Medicaid is going to recover that amount and the family is not. So the payback only affects Medicaid benefits. People get a little confused with that. They think of all the benefits they're receiving. It's only Medicaid. Medicaid paybacks include third-party contributions as well from the parents, grandparents, and siblings. So you want to make sure that when you're putting a lot of money into ABLE, you run that risk, if they've received a lot of Medicaid, of losing that money in the future. Anything you want to add there, Jeff?
So, a couple of things just to clarify, and you mentioned it, Kelly, and this surprises a lot of people, but sometimes there's a buy-in premium to Medicaid and in the given states, and that buy-in premium, if you've paid it, and sometimes it's even hidden, but it's a cost to Medicaid, that conceivably could be part of the retrieval as well in a recovery of Medicaid benefits. Another thing is there are now 10 states that are not recovering Medicaid, but you could buy a national plan, like Virginia, for instance, has a national plan, but you live somewhere where there still is Medicaid coverage, whereas Virginia, they passed legislation where there isn't Medicaid coverage. So it's important to really understand where you live and what Medicaid recovery would be in your own state, regardless of the plan that you might involve yourself with an ABLE account. So that's an important factor. And then keep in mind, it's Medicaid. So that we got to watch this SSI. We can't go above the 100,000 if the person's been on Medicaid. But a lot of people, if they've got a work history where they've got monies that are there, they may not be on SSI. They may be on an SSDI or other federal benefits where Medicaid hasn't been taken or they're not participating. So that's another factor, is understand whether you've been in the program or not in the program. And also, if you're in Medicaid, when you go into an ABLE account, it's only from that point forward. So if you were enrolling today and you've been on Medicaid for 10 years, none of those past benefits are going to come into play. It's only today going forward that Medicaid's going to come. So it's important to apply this to your own situation, to the state where you're living, and really understand the impact that's there. Later, we're going to show another comparative tool, and you've already mentioned it once, Kelly, as we start to look at the various different things. So again, looking at the various
we're getting a couple questions. We're getting a question. Can I put money from my paycheck into an ABLE account? So that's something that you can absolutely do that. That's not going to be an issue. That's what I think it's there for. So that would not be a problem. I'm also hearing, what's the, just to be clear, how does an ABLE account affect the 529? and how does the 529 affect the able? Well, typically a person with a disability, when they have a 529 and they turn 18, that becomes theirs. So that is always a concern, and that's why able came into play, so that many families could roll the 529 into an able account, so that the person with a disability didn't have both. They had either or, but the 529 could potentially cause you to lose your government benefits. Jerry, is that correct? You want to add anything to that?
Well, if you've got a 529 plan that allows you to change beneficiaries, then generally they don't consider that to be an asset when it comes to the calculations of the means test. That's if you can change beneficiaries. There's a lot of prepaid college plans out there, Coverdale plans, those kinds of things. So you have to be really careful with that. But what we strongly encourage, though, is because now 529 college plans or educational plans can be moved over and the money can be transferred to ABLE. And ABLE also can pay for education, but a lot of other expenses. So it's a tax consideration and planning consideration. Do you need both? Might you get by with one of the two plans? Those kinds of things to really understand the distinction and to make sure that the kind of college or education plan that you have is not one that's going to count against you for means testing, so that all of that comes into play on that basis. The transference from a college or education 529 plan to an ABLE account is still limited to the $15,000 annual contribution. So if you've been putting money in and you've got a lot of money accumulating in a college plan as well, you'd have to stage that over a period of time because of the limitation of the 15. And that's, as Kelly and I have always talked about, is one of the shortcomings of the ABLE accounts is that there's a lot of limitations around that one contribution level of 15,000, particularly if multiple family members are participating in those kinds of things. When we look at the various plans that are out there, there's a lot of consortiums. So you have the ABLE Alliance, and that includes over 20 different states that are participating in the ABLE Alliance. You've got the Stable plan out of Ohio that's built partners, and there's about 12 or 13 states that they're involved with as partners. But when you go to the states, you'll see that it is partnering with those. There's another dozen or so states that are independent plans that are out there. And then there's some exclusive states, like a Florida, for instance, it's only there for Florida residents, and that's the only people that can participate. Nebraska has its own plan. We're down to only 4 states that don't have programs at this point, and even they are partnered or allowing for it. They just don't have their own program. So there's a lot of possibilities of how you can look at and choose which plan you're going to be in and what's the best one for you. It's going to involve around the fees. It's going to involve around, the state mandated amounts that are tax deductible, those kinds of things that are going to help with the decision making as to what's to take place.
And Jared, the
So
fees
that opening,
so the fees do vary from state to state, correct? That's one of the things
absolutely
you should be looking at. It's also a question that just came in. So I mean, the fees really depend upon the state. And there is a chart that you can go to, and I believe it tells you all the differences for each of the ABLE accounts in each state. You don't have to stay within your state, but you can also take a look at, say, Pennsylvania or any other state that has an ABLE account available and see the different bells and whistles. You can also see the fees. So that's a good source for you to take a look at as well.
Well, and the states are going to vary in the underlying investments and guaranteed accounts that are in them. They're going to vary with various features. Most states are having to move in the direction of naming successor beneficiaries, whereas that was not true early on, but now legislation is pretty much mandated they have to do that. And so you can now list in most states, almost all the states, beneficiaries or successors. If something were to happen, you need to know whether there's a state tax deduction and all the services that are going to go with that particular plan as you look at it and you're looking to adopt that. I think one of the first decisions is, does my state have a tax deduction? And if that's true, then that's going to affect your decision about which program you might be in. I mean, the state of Pennsylvania has a $15,000 state tax deduction. You can deduct the entire contribution. So that's pretty incredible. None of the other states have anywhere near that total available to them when you start to look at it. So let's talk about, opening up an ABLE account. Kelly, why don't you go ahead?
You can really enroll in any state's ABLE program, as Jerry had just explained. It's really up to you, but I would take a close look at that as well. And then the state's going to determine the enrollment process. They may be a little different, but for the most part, it's pretty much the same. The maintenance of the account is primarily done through the individual state ABLE program. The website, the online portal, that's going to show you all the information. And some allow via mail or fax, but most of them, I can tell you, are online. So depending on the state, there may be a minimum contribution to open the account, as well as an annual maintenance fee, which we're getting questions about. We can't tell you what everyone is because they are definitely different, but there is a site that provides you with that information. When an account owner passes away, the funds in the account after the payback can be used for qualified disability expenses such as funeral and burial. Remaining funds can go to a named successor. So the money can go back to your family. People are saying to me, why open an ABLE account? Why do we need an ABLE account? Some people don't need an ABLE account, but keep in mind why it was established. It was established to give the person with a disability some independence. I had said it in the beginning. Up until this point, individuals that want to qualify for government benefits could not have anything in their name over $2,000, and it's closely watched. This gave people the opportunity to have money in an account that they actually can spend. And a 30-year-old guy doesn't have to go to his mother and say, I need $20 to go out to dinner. So ABLE isn't for everyone, but it does allow you to have more than that $2,000 and not be disqualified. Why do you want a 529 versus an ABLE? Well, really, I mean, if you qualify for a 529 and you don't qualify for an ABLE, that's your answer right there. But I mean, the reason for the ABLE was to give that same type of independence to a person with a disability and continue to qualify them for government benefits. Whereas when we have 529s and we have different things that we pass to our children, at some point they're in their name, they're considered their assets. This is not considered an asset against the person, so the person will continue to qualify for government benefits. So that's really one of the reasons.
I mean, and those are key points from that standpoint. I mean, I think the question was asked about income, and I mean, we've got a lot of programs that are out there, and Ohio was really first to the dance to set up ACH debits out of payroll systems so that you could contribute to an ABLE. We've got the ABLE Employment Flexibility Act that's come out of committee now. It's moving to the floor of Congress, and they're looking to add sponsors. And what that's going to allow is an ABLE account to be used as a conduit for retirement monies from an employer so that it doesn't impact on public assistance benefits or other benefits that might be being received. So we're really seeing ABLE as a device, as another instrument. We don't participate in every financial instrument. Some of us may have savings accounts or just checking accounts or brokerage accounts. But unfortunately, for those with disabilities, many times the means test has precluded them from doing some level of planning on a tax-advantaged basis. So view it as an instrument, and it's not an either or. I have families that have both college plans and as well as ABLE accounts. So it's really very dependent upon what the individual needs of the person is, how the funds are going to be used, what benefit structures they're on, the states are in, and those kinds of things when you're considering it. And you're right, Kelly, we have later on a slide from the ABLE National Resource Center that they can go to. There you can actually compare multiple plans right online and look at the situation that best fits your own situation.
Yeah, I mean,
So
I
again,
think it's up to the individual. Families that have a 529 college slate, they can actually transfer the money to an ABLE account. You can also roll it to another person, another child. So, I mean, it's something that our families consider, but, you know, why roll it to another child when maybe the person or the child you're caring for is going to need this money in the future? So I would consider rolling it into an ABLE account, keeping in mind that both accounts must have the same beneficiary to be a qualified member of the beneficiary's family. Contributions can be transferred from a special needs trust, as I spoke a little bit about in the beginning, and are subject to the contribution limits. I'm also getting questions, can we say for a house in a 529? I don't think anybody's asking you when you have a certain amount of money in an ABLE account, what you're going to do with it. The whole thing with this is that keep in mind, if the person passes away and they got Medicaid, that money is going to the government, not to that person. But you can certainly use ABLE account money to put towards housing. That's not a disqualified event. That is something that is qualified. So you can put money into an ABLE. I know individuals, we don't typically have individuals that save for a house in a ABLE account, but we do have individuals that have money in there to pay their rent every month. That is something that a lot of individuals do. So do you have anything you want to add there?
Well, and you know, you're saying it's an individual thing. So, you know, if there's a house involved or how to structure the best way to do these things, bottom line here on this particular topic of ABLE accounts is there's much more flexibility of the use of an ABLE funds toward housing related costs, which doesn't really exist in other methodologies. So it's just another consideration. So when we look at the states, if you go to this site, and Kelly mentioned it earlier, www.ablenrc.org, it's the National ABLE Resource Center. That allows you to look at all the states. You can click on the particular state. You can actually run comparisons between states. Many of the considerations are going to come down to whether or not you get a tax deduction within your state. Right now, there are 18 states out of our 50 states that offer a tax deduction. So all of those are going to be considerations that you're looking at this. This is probably the single best resource to really do some comparative analysis because it's going to get into fees, investments, and everything that goes with that when you're looking at an ABLE account. But again, I think it's something to consider. It's not for everybody, nor is anything necessarily for everybody. I love it when we get calls and I went to a workshop and they say, I need a special needs trust. It really all depends upon the particular situation that the individual's involved with as to what the needs are going to be and how you're going to solve those. So getting into anything else to add there, Kelly?
Well, I mean, this is, for me, I think this is the best resource. This particular site, you can go in and you can do the comparison, and I like that the best because we don't really know the specifics of every single state. And I think if you're considering Tennessee and Virginia, wherever it is, you can put it in and see if that's appealing to you. Keep in mind that ABLE accounts are closely monitored. So these have to be qualified expenses. So people are saying, you know, and sending in chat, why do I need one? Why should I consider one? Once again, if you qualify for government benefits, you want to continue to qualify, this is yet another tool, another resource that you can utilize. And that's, you know, really the only thing I have to add there regarding, you know, the resources out there. It's something to consider. It's not for everybody. Special needs trusts are not for everybody. It really depends. I'm also getting a lot of questions regarding the diagnosis and, you know, what if I had symptoms at 18, but I wasn't diagnosed until I was 30? That's something that a physician would have to document, and you would have to sit down with Social Security Administration and speak to them about that to see if you qualify. Once again, the same thing with ABLE, you have to show them that you qualified. I'm not sure if you weren't diagnosed until you're 26, if you do qualify, but you're saying you had symptoms at 18. So it really depends on what that physician puts down in the documentation that you receive from them. That's really going to be the deciding factor. Joe, do you have anything there?
Yeah, just one last thing too. And again, a lot of people worry about collecting too much or having too much money, and so they don't exceed the means test. We've actually, what the law now too also allows you to assign SSI funds directly to an ABLE account. So sometimes you can assign it and then can turn around and use it to reimburse expenses or reimburse back to the family. But again, it's an instrument and it's going to be applied to your own specific situation as you're looking at it. So something that you need to consider in the process. We talked about this earlier, considering about, you know, ABLE accounts, and we are limited to the $15,000 coming from the various different sources. And the sources can be family members. It could be coming from parents. It could be coming from extended family. It could be monies that are excess in accounts that are growing that you want to get out so you don't transfer or get above the means test. But it's limited to the $15,000. And so that's where we see many times able accounts in conjunction with special needs trusts when there's dollar amounts that are above that for inheritance or settlements or judgments. There's nothing that appears on the table to be considering that for special things like inheritance and settlements and judgments, they're going to open it up that can be transferred as a special exception. They're still sticking to the 15,000. So that's where the integration is going to be very important as to how it integrates with the other planning, how it integrates with the other assets that the individual has, because ABLE has constraints around that $15,000 annual contribution. The beneficiary, again, can be older than 26. We make that point repeatedly because people think if you're older than 26, you can't have one. As Kelly just stated, as long as the diagnosis is documented prior to 26, in most instances, we're seeing those people successfully qualify for it. And what we're dealing with here too, many times, it's just like you might have a rep payee for SSI. If the beneficiary is not able to make those financial decisions, there's going to be somebody that overlooks that, just like you would with a rep payee or a guardian or somebody that's driving the process of decision making above that. So this is really important from a consideration of how they work and how they might tie into what you see with a special needs trust. So anything to add there, Kelly?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just getting questions like, can a parent roll a 401k retirement? And I think that the first bullet really covers that. Keep in mind that 15,000 is the limit. There's really no way around it. And if there's other monies in there, once you go over the 15 in a given year, you have a problem. Same thing with the 100,000. You can have over 100,000, but once it goes over 100, you're going to run into a problem. There's taxes, there's disqualification for benefits until that money goes back down. So you really want to keep in mind that those limits are very strict. There's no wiggle room. It's only $1 over, it's $2 over. There's no wiggle room with it. That's exactly what it has to be. So that's the only thing really I have to add.
Yes. Yeah, if you're on SSI, you got to be very, very careful. And you'd have to drive it back down under 100 so the suspension of SSI stopped and restarted again. So again, very specific to specific situations. So Kelly, talk a little bit about special needs trusts and how they work.
Sure. I mean, we talked a little bit about it, that when it comes to a special needs trust, there's a first party and a third party. Typically, a first party is someone that has owned the money or the money comes from a settlement. And then there's a third party, which is the one that we deal with the most, that is typically set up by parents or on someone's behalf. So if you're caring for someone with a disability, typically it's set up. It stipulates how the money's contributed to the trust and not dispersed for the beneficiary. The beneficiary doesn't have as many decision-making opportunities with the special needs trust, though there are some, but for the most part, the money decision is decided by somebody else. Usually there is somebody that provides a service. The money doesn't go to the person that the trust is set up for to pay the person. The money goes directly to the person that provided that service. The special needs trust will cover things that make the person's life better. Very similar with an ABLE account. You can pay for certain things out of a special needs trust. They can have a new iPad once a year, twice a year, whatever they may need. Anything that's going to make their life better, you can use a special needs trust to do that. You can put a house in a special needs trust as long as it's not underwater and that there is enough money in there to maintain it over the life of the person that's going to be living in it. So there are many things that a special needs trust can do that an ABLE account cannot. Example would be a life insurance, if you want to put life insurance in there or make the trust a beneficiary of life insurance, that's fine. You could put as much money as you want in a special needs trust and that person would still qualify for government benefits. Keep in mind, there are limitations with an ABLE account. And once the money is there, you don't want to exceed those limitations. There is state-specific language that is necessary. We always say that you should go to an attorney that specializes in this area. If you're getting a divorce, You certainly don't want to go to a real estate attorney. Same deal with a special needs trust. You want to work with a qualified attorney that does more than 1 or 2 special needs trusts a year, because the language is very state specific. Name a trustee is responsible to carry out the terms of the trust agreement. It's somebody that you can trust, somebody that's going to make sure that the money goes towards this individual and makes their life better. And you can have a successor as well if you think something may happen to that person, or you just want to put a few people in line. If you don't have someone to oversee a trust, there are corporate trustees, there are banks, there are different nonprofits that can oversee a trust as well. The trustee is obligated to act both in accordance with these provisions and in the interest of the beneficiaries. It's watched very closely. One of the main reasons for this is so that the money is there for the person to make their life better. It's not there for the trustee to make their life better. It is to pay for things that are going to help the individual. My son had a special needs trust for years. If I wanted to, get a vehicle to take him around in, he was not able to walk, so he was in a wheelchair. If I could get a van to take him around, that would be a qualified expense. But if I wanted to get a red Corvette, because that's something I always wanted to drive him around, it wouldn't really be a reasonable expense, because A, he's in a wheelchair and couldn't really fit in a red Corvette. And was that really what he wanted? So it's really acting in accordance with what's best for the person that the trust is for. There are many ways a special needs trust can be created to fill the needs of a family. You can establish one while you're alive. You can put information, you can die intestate and put information in your will that upon my death, I have 4 children. Before you make any disbursements to my son, Nicholas, who would have received the money just like the other ones, that would disqualify him. So if I put in a will to set up a special needs trust prior to dispersing any money to him, that would continue to qualify him for government benefits. So, that's something that you could do. A special needs trust works well with an ABLE account. You can have both, you could have one, or you could have neither. It's really up to you. Like a special needs trust, and the same thing with an ABLE account, you can set it up. If you don't use it, you can close it. With a third-party special needs trust, if it never has to be used, you don't end up using it, you can close it as well. Keep in mind that if any money goes in there, especially with a first-party trust, and that you owe the government, they are going to look for that money before any closing of that trust. So you should employ the services of an attorney who's familiar with the laws and regulation regarding your state. And once again, not all lawyers are familiar with the complex Medicaid rules. We have a list. We work with the Academy for Special Needs Planners. We work with the Alliance for Special Needs Planners. They don't work for MassMutual. We get a lot of their names from nonprofits, as well as these associations for attorneys that specialize in special needs. So we have that information as well, if you need that information. Joe, did you have anything you wanted to add there?
Well, I think what you're basically pointing out, Kelly, is that this is a holistic approach. When we're looking at a legal structure, when we're looking at a situation, a family situation, an individual situation, it all has to be considered. It's about expanding a person's lifestyle beyond what they're looking and what they see for themselves, looking at all the financial. There's no decision we make that doesn't have a financial backdrop. So, all these instruments, whether they be legal instruments or financial instruments, they all come into play as things that are there, but not necessarily applying to everyone. So, it's important to get people that you can work with, that you can have these discussions, and then build the best overall plan for yourself and for your family that best meets the needs and provides for the lifestyle that you're looking for. So how do you see MassMutual helping in this process, Kelly?
We have over 500 special needs planners across the country that work in every state and that are familiar with special needs planning. 86% of them are special needs parents like myself, so they live it every day. So in order to be a special needs planner at MassMutual, we do ask and require that they get advanced training. They go through the American College and earn something called a Chartered Special Needs Consultant designation, which means they understand the unique planning techniques of special needs planning. So, I mean, we can provide a financial analysis for the future of what a person may need, keeping in mind what they're receiving from the government, what they may not be receiving, what they're going to receive in the future. They can coordinate the financial strategies with an attorney, and they work with other professionals to make sure that your plan is a holistic plan and it covers every aspect of the person's life. We can coordinate with other professionals to ensure the benefits such as Medicaid, SSI won't unintentionally be jeopardized. That's one of the things that we work with every day. We talk to families about who is the beneficiary on your life insurance policy. If you have a person that's receiving government benefits, you could potentially bar them from receiving them or disqualify them. So we know the questions to ask about the current and future needs, and we help the caregivers maintain the lifestyle of special needs of the individual. Because it's really, as a caregiver and a parent, it's that one thing that keeps you at night, that who's going to step in when I'm no longer here, and to make sure that if you want to leave money for the person with special needs, that the money is there for them and that they can continue to receive government benefits and have everything else that they need. Jared, did you want to add anything there?
I think you've covered it, and it's the ultimate is, work with the professionals that have expertise in this particular area. And as you stated, those are attorneys specializing, financial people specializing, all of those. Then you're going to get the best result. So that brings us to the end. Kelly, are there other questions that we need to answer?
Sure. We do have a couple minutes and we have a couple questions. So Jared, I'm going to read you the questions. We are getting let me just go back because we got quite a few and I'm hoping we answered them. I did talk about the diagnosis. I also spoke about the 100K. It does not disqualify you, keeping in mind that when you go over that, then that would be a problem. We will get some information out. Can we give out our exact presentation? We would have to check on that. So I just want to make sure before I say we'll definitely send that out. I'm trying to scroll down into some of these questions and I apologize. So Jared, we're getting, is it possible to, are contributions tax exempt for a parent who contributes to an account?
So any money that goes into the account could come from any number of giftors or donors. And as it goes into the account, it's going to accumulate on a tax-free basis. So it accumulates tax-free, and distributions that come out for qualified expenses are not taxable. So it is a tax-advantaged account, regardless of who's putting up the money. As Kelly mentioned also, if you're on SSI and the beneficiaries predeceases the account being used up, then it doesn't make any difference who the contribution came from. It could come from parents or themselves, but that's going to be potentially recoverable in the 40 states that are still doing recovery. So you just have to be careful from that standpoint. But yes, any contribution is going to be a tax-free accumulation.
So can one on SSDI contribute any money earned working if you exceed the SGA, the substantial gainful activity?
So could you repeat that one more time?
Can one on SSDI, can a person on SSDI contribute any money earned working if you exceed the SGA?
As long as you're not in a retirement plan that your employer, then and you qualify for an ABLE account, then you can put up to the $12,760 from earnings. So that's the source, whether it's SSDI or SSI, or you're not on any kind of benefit structure. If a disability and you qualify for an ABLE, that allows you to put in earned income up to the $12,000. If you're earning more, then that's the contribution amount based on poverty line.
Right.
But your eligibility, that doesn't affect your eligibility for ABLE itself. And if you're eligible for ABLE, you can put in earned income up to that amount.
And I got another question that says, I live in HUD housing and can only make so much money to live here. Do you know if the money in an ABLE account would count? I'm afraid it would put me over the limit and I can't live here anymore. Well, once again, it will not disqualify you. as long
Right.
as you
It
stay
will-
within the limits. So it would not
Correct,
disqualify you. You wouldn't be taken out of housing as a result of it.
Correct.
Our contributions to, we answered that. Just trying to see if there's any more that maybe I didn't answer. We're hearing, where do I find a list of special needs planners? I will send that on for the different states. If you have a specific state, I can give you my email as well. It's Piacenti, KPIACENTI @massmutual.com. But if you're asking for a specific state, we can give you the attorneys that are in that state that are special needs attorneys. We can do the same thing with special needs planners. So if you'd like to work with someone at MassMutual, you want to send me an email, I will give you their information. I will not ask anyone to reach out to you. I would leave that up to you. So once again, my email is Piacenti, and I'll put it in the chat as well. And I will send that out to you. I'm not sure if anybody has any questions, Lori, that I did not get to or want to ask them live. Jerry and I have a couple minutes and we'd be happy to answer more questions if I missed any in the chat. I know I was trying to answer a few, but there are quite a few coming in about diagnosis. Once again, they have to go to the physician. Can you send money from your check to an ABLE account? You can. Upon death, ABLE balance money is taken to pay government outstanding bills, correct? Medicaid, they will come and they will ask for that money. They can only take what's in there. There is no other means that they can get it from. So whatever in there, if it's $1, they can get that. If it's only, you know, a percentage of what's in there, they can get that as well. They can only take what has been spent.
But they can also, prior, if there's any outstanding qualified expenses that have not been paid out yet, then those
Like burial
qualified
expenses
expenses
can be
can be paid
taken
upon
out
death.
as well.
Burial and that. Kelly and I had a situation recently where an individual bought multiple burial plots through it because the individual is going to be buried with their family, and they literally legitimized the multiple plots. So there's a lot of flexibility around the burial expenses and things like that, that you are allowed then to deplete some of those funds if you saw that that's the direction it was headed.
Well, that's really good to know. Thank you so much, Kelly and Jerry, for all the information that you shared on the ABLE accounts and a little bit on a special needs trust. Certainly complex topics to navigate. And so we appreciate all of the background information and tips and tricks that you've provided regarding those accounts. And I think that we're definitely pretty much caught up on questions asked. I did want to let everyone know that this session is being recorded. And so a recording of this session will be made available in a few days on NAF's website. And if Jerry, you want to send us over your slides, we'd be happy to post the slides as well along with the recording, but the recording will enable you to view the slides along with the audio that is with the slides here in today's Zoom webinar.
Lori, if they weren't able to ask a question or they didn't get my email, I did post my email in the chat.
Perfect.
And if you guys want to post it again, we're fine. But I would say if they do have a question, they can email me directly and we're happy to answer it. I'm not sure if we can give you the actual slides. They will see it in the presentation. But if there's a question we didn't answer or they have any comments or concerns, happy to answer them as well, and they can email me directly.
That's perfect. Thank you so much, Kelly.
Great.
Any
Well, it was
other
so nice
questions?
being with you guys again today, and we look forward to seeing you in the future, hopefully live. But if you do get anything or anyone missed it, I would encourage them to go back and take a look at the webinar that you recorded. It's a lot of information in a very short period of time. So we really just touched upon ABLE, barely touched special needs, but if you have a question that we didn't cover, we're happy to answer that as well.
Thanks so much, Kelly.
Great.
And if you could type in your email one more time in the chat, just making sure that it goes to everyone. I think some people can't see it.
I just want to make sure I spelt it correctly.
Right, there it is. So we'll give everyone a moment to copy and paste that for their reference onto their computer. But I think that this is great. Like you said, Kelly, a lot of information. So hopefully folks are able to share it with their family and reference the recording for any of the information that would be helpful for them. And truly appreciate everyone out there for joining us today with an interest in this topic. And as Kelly said, if you do have any additional questions, feel free to email her. Her email is in the chat. And thank you, Kelly and Jerry, so much again for all of the information that you shared with us today. This was really helpful. Thank you.
Great.
Thank
you
you.
so much, Jerry, and
Take
thank
care.
you. Have a
Take care,
great
everyone.
day.
Take care, everyone.
Thank you.
Have a good day.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.